welcome to another edition of Hope Rocks Recovery. My name is Joe DeFino, and I am the founder and executive director of Hope Rocks Incorporated. And we are a program designed to enlighten, educate, empower, and engage individuals, families, and communities in the counter-assault of addiction, suicide, and other forms of unnatural death due to mental imbalance, due to addictive behaviors, and we are a grassroots organization committed to this. In this edition, we're going to talk about the coronavirus and its collateral damage, or how it's enlightened us to take a look at the mental complexities of our young people. Myself, I'm an educator, and I've invited a high school psychologist and coach, Mike Pugliese, to join us today, and we are going to get into this topic of the collateral damage that this social isolation may be causing, and some of the things that we need to be looking for as parents and as peers and as friends in our classmates, in our children, and in our community members. So I want to welcome Coach, and it's good to have you here, Coach.
How you doing? I call you Coach too, so I think they're going to hear a lot of Coach versus Coach.
Well, thank you very much. For those that don't know, I was a baseball coach, a football coach, and a basketball coach for over 20 years at the same high school that Mike works at as well. So it's good to have you here, Mike. The coronavirus situation, pandemic, social isolation, the situation that we're in is one in which that we've never experienced before. And I know in talking to young people, talking to parents and such, they're seeing things at home and they're seeing things within themselves that are really causing them to open their eyes about a condition of mental wellness that they may be lacking or they may be in. So I'm going to throw that out to you. What do you think the impact could possibly be with not educational, but more of a social, emotional impact?
Okay, well, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. So looking into this again, I'm just a school psychologist, which was a very directed degree towards like school psychology. So there's definitely more people out there that have more clinical background, and there's better school psychologists. There's a lot more that there's better school psychologists in the office that I work in that would be good here too. But thanks for having me on. I think what you're kind of what we're kind of dealing with here is now this is a very unforeseen, very strange, obviously. In itself, I think March 13th, March 14th in our area, maybe a little bit before in certain areas, maybe a little bit behind in other areas. March 13th, March 14th, there was almost a sense of shock going on, and people were just trying to understand what was going on, and almost like I think kids were in okay spirits. I think I talk to a lot of them often, every day, and they seemed that they were okay. They were kind of just like trying to wait this out. And then when we get to the 2, 3, 4 weeks, we get into like the March, 30th, you get into April. That's when it started to really hit what was going on. And now we're 6 weeks into this, 7 weeks into this, and we're starting our 7th week of this. I think we're starting to see the effects. I think we can all start making predictions on what the long-term effects will be, and the short-term effects. And it's just a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely. And you hit on a really good point, and I talked to my students about it this week. This week, again, Socrates is into our 5th week of distance learning, and we had a couple of weeks to get our feet on the ground. But in talking to my kids this week, I noticed that for the first 3 days, I was in a serious funk. And I was in a funk because of lack of contact with my students. Not that I didn't have contact with my family. My family's here. But what it did is it made me aware of the fact that I have a lot of experience. I'm an older person. It made me really aware of the fact that we are social creatures and we need to have that interaction, personal interaction, not face-to-face via computer, that personal side-by-side interaction. Otherwise, we're going to feel it. And my thoughts are, if I'm feeling it, the kids have to be feeling it. And so I shared that with them, and we spent a couple of days really opening up to it. And one of the students said to me in particular, I just don't feel right. Something must be wrong with me. And we're talking about a fifth grader or a sixth grader.
Right.
And for them to identify that, it spoke volumes to me. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, you were saying that you had this conversation this week, or was the first week of distance learning?
This was this week. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm starting to see that too. I'm starting to see week 5, again, week 7 of kind of where we're at. And I'm starting to see, in the last couple of weeks where it's almost like the shock of this is over. Even when the distance learning started, that took up the time of for staff, for colleagues, for kids to try to figure out what's going on. And now that we kind of have that going and there's a routine with that, now it's like now I can start digesting this, and I think kids are now starting to realize, like, wow, I don't really know what's going on here with this. And, and I think you're hitting it on the head for what the more important part is for students and a lot of people. And I don't want to sound cavalier when I say this because, I haven't had anyone impacted in my life by the actual virus. But I think the social isolation, what could happen, what is happening, is going to be a real something that we're really going to need to look at, and could be even a bigger issue when this is all said and done, than us figuring out the virus. And again, I don't want to sound cavalier and unapathetic, and I know there's a lot of people going through, you see those numbers and things like that of people passing away. But that's it. Moving forward, the longer this goes, the more of an issue it can be, and that's an issue. The social isolation, the social effects of this is an issue that could be way after hopefully we find some treatment, hopefully we find some vaccine, hopefully we put some things into place, so.
Yes, that is to me, a huge eye-opener in terms of my role as an educator. Because a lot of times what happens, and this is just typical, and we get into our viewpoint, in our perspective, we see things from the point of view as a teacher, instruction, what are the best ways to reach our kids and allow them to be successful as students. And here we are, we're getting a real insight into our children. They're not just our students, they're our children, and what it is that makes them tick, what makes them afraid, what makes them fearful, what makes them confident. And I think if we really use this knowledge and this perspective in the proper way, when we come back to normalcy, we can apply some of these things that we've learned in our classrooms and in our interactions with these students.
I think I think in seeing this, there's a lot of advantages we're going to have coming out of this. I think we're touching on a lot of things we've never touched on, education-wise, social. There's a lot of different things. How about there's also a sense of humility that everyone has now. Like this has been a very humbling situation for everybody. So are you more gracious? Are you more humble in your everyday? Are you calling people that you haven't called in a while, which is a great thing to do? But maybe this is giving you that situation to check in on people. There's a lot of things that are coming from this. From our perspective at school, and I've been telling a lot of people this, we are having great meetings with parents, great CSE meetings with parents. We're doing it through Google Meets. They're coming right in. They see. not that we have bad relationships with them, but every meeting ends with, I hope everyone, the parent, thank you so much. I hope everyone stays safe. And there's such a, they're in the comfort of their own house. If there's a video, we're very efficient in the way we're doing it. So maybe that helps as well. They feel more, but there is something that can be said within that. And I think it's something we can bring forward with us when we come back when we're into a building and all those kind of things. Maybe video conferencing is a good thing. The kids, there are kids. And, we say it all the time. There are students right now, we've been talking about it, they're doing more work now than they've ever done before. It's because we're on their schedule. They have a little bit of a flexible schedule and they're doing their work. Maybe they're not socially, maybe the school anxiety that they have isn't impacting them. So they just see it's a black and white thing. I have this Google slide to do for my work. I will do it. There are others that are, that are not as successful, but, there's a lot of things that go on with this. How about the fact that, people are now getting very, very better with technology. Our teachers are getting better. Google Classroom is, I've used it a couple times for like baseball stuff. I use it, to see other thing. I'm going to use it for the rest of my life. And I'm a psychologist with no instruction I need to learn. I'm going to use it for coaching. I'm going to use Google Meets with coaching, for coaching. It's going to, there's a lot of things coming out of this that we're getting a lot better in. And sometimes we just need to be reminded that we need to focus sometimes on that, so.
And I think that this has allowed us to do that. And you make a great point, because I wanted to get into some specific conversations that I've had with students this week. And I had conversations with a 13-year-old boy. I had a conversation with two 16-year-old girls, a conversation with an adult. And essentially, this is the situation. One of the 16-year-old girls, now, to think about that too, 16 is a tough age. 16 is a tough age for a girl. In the throes of adolescence, in the throes of a technological revolution, and then to throw on top of it this pandemic, this unprecedented isolation. She's talking about how she likes being away from the school environment because she doesn't have to get herself worked up to go to school. And she didn't realize how sick she got each morning getting herself worked up. Now, I'm not saying dressed up, but for that whole social impact at school has been taken away.
Right.
And for this individual, it's a huge relief. And then we have another individual, another 16-year-old girl, who is really having difficulty with time alone, too much time to think about it. She's worried, she's anxious, she's overwhelmed, and she's overwhelmed with the thought, will I ever feel normal again? So you have two opposite sides, and then you have the 13-year-old boy who is just, he says, I just don't feel right. There's something wrong with me. And I'll talk about the adult later, but take a look at those perspectives of those students, and it's so enlightening for we as educators.
Yeah, so the first girl who is now feeling more comfortable at home, and now also realizing the amount of, probably she didn't realize it, the amount of energy she was exhausting before school, thinking about the school day. She's doing better. And this is a new world where in the past, and I still have a little bit of I get myself into these situations sometimes where I start thinking about the fact that I still want people, especially students, if I'm talking about students, players, if I'm talking about baseball players, I want them to get out of bed with something to do. So now that we have this, now that we're inside, we're home and we can kind of do our work with more of a flexible, schedule here and in that situation, is that going to be realistic when that 16-year-old becomes an 18-year-old and she now has to go to work, and she has somewhere to be? Well, it's a new world now. So a lot of times, people could be working from home, and if that's what fits her well, that's what fits her well. But it's, I do think there is something to be said with, when you get up, there's something, you have to do something at a certain time, because that control we all have great jobs. I have the best job in the world, all of them, everyone that I do have. But on Sunday night, sometimes I have to remind myself that I love it because there's a structure in place that at 7:25 I have to be somewhere. And as much as we love our jobs, I don't know if we like the fact that we're being told to be somewhere at some point. So whether it's in our house, in front of a video screen, we have to make sure that that's the case. That we're telling people we have to be certain where at a certain time, because that's preparing them for the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. You talk about, and I call it routine. I think the human element needs a routine. And that's probably one of the things that I've as a teacher with my students have been hitting home most frequently and most importantly is this is difficult because you don't have a routine. And it is up to you to establish a routine, because once we allow ourselves to put things off for 10 minutes, put things off for an hour, put things off till the afternoon, put things off to tomorrow, put things off to next week, we're finding ourselves not leaving our bed, leaving the couch, and being overwhelmed with a feeling of depression. And so that routine helps us to get out of that. And it's very difficult to monitor yourself with your own routine. So I know what you're saying, Coach, and it is truly something that the school structure, the school day, the school bells automatically build in. But once that's taken away, we're left to our own.
So you have adolescents, and most adolescents do a lot better with structure. Some can be okay without it, but most want to do it with structure. I'm a 36-year-old who does really well with structure. So if Soaring Central Schools isn't providing me structure, I have to kind of provide structure for myself. And what I've realized, and I've said the word routine probably more over the last 6 weeks than I've said it ever, and I always used to harp on people about what you think. You're not really measured on what you're thinking. You're really measured on your actions.
Right.
But your actions are what? Your actions are your routine. So you're really measured on what your routine is and what you're doing in that routine versus what you think you're going to be doing and what you think about and all those other kind of things. And what we have to, and I try to schedule out my day as much as I can. But what I realize about myself, and I'm sure it's happening with, is that there's a lack of almost urgency every day because you just feel like today is going to be very similar to tomorrow. So if I didn't get to this today, I can do it tomorrow. And I'd never been that kind of person in my professional life where I wanted to just kind of push things off to tomorrow. I wanted to get everything today. There's almost a sense of, well, how's this Tuesday different from Wednesday? How's this Thursday different from Friday? It's a Saturday night, and wow, this night seems a lot different very similar to how it was on Wednesday. So you lose that lack of urgency. So we have to create that, and those are words that I say a lot, are actions and urgency. And I think that's where we could be, really, really impacting, because, eventually there's going to be a bell and the students are going to have to go to that certain class at that bell. And there's going to be a time limit given to their test, or whatever, or they're going to have a shift and they have to be there at 8:00, which means that, I do see that, and I try to create some urgent moments for myself. I try to create some urgent moments for anyone I can, because I think we need a little bit of sense of that, because that could be lacking as we move forward. And the longer it lacks for, the longer it's going to be hard to get back.
Totally agree. And I think now that we've seen this, we can anticipate it and put in some safeguards, and we can also make some modifications in terms of our instructional delivery and our interpersonal communication. Not only interpersonal communication, interpersonal relationships with our students. So we see, and I see it, and you see it, we see the full personality unfold before us in this type of situation. I mean, I am seeing my students in a different manner. And it's good for me. It's really good for me. because like I said, sometimes you fall into this routine, our own routine as instructors, teachers, and caregivers and so forth, that we don't get to expand our perspective. So I'm really hoping this expanded perspective allows us to reach these kids, and I'm going to go in a little bit different direction here, allow us to reach these kids during a time, and adolescence is a brutally difficult time, and our guests on Hope Rocks prior to this one, and our speakers at various events, without question, without fail, all talked about the need, what schools should do, because I always ask, how can schools help out? What schools should do is have mandatory counseling for all students at least once a week. And the reason being, and these are all successful people, but they got to success after hitting some really hard roadblocks that could have killed them, and in many cases should have killed them. And all of them said, when I was younger, I always felt there was something missing in me. And I couldn't talk about it because I didn't know what it was or what was happening to me, but it would have been so valuable to have somebody to talk to. Because when I was 13 or 14 or 12 or 15, I started filling that thing that was missing with alcohol, with pot, with behaviors that are harmful, self-harm behaviors. And so maybe, this gives us an opportunity to open up and see how that might develop with the counseling piece. And I know it's saying counseling in the face of a huge economic crisis it seems like it's not going to happen, but we have an opportunity.
Yeah, so it's funny because kind of we ended the last question with. I took a couple notes or whatever, and then you started bringing up other things, and I thought, okay, then I won't use these notes. But what I was thinking about was, so we go back to school, and there's a teacher that can use distance learning experience and use Google Classroom. Or the students are more likely to use their email or their Google Hangouts now because we've used it, so you can contact with that. And I've noticed texting with students from the past that I've had their number, that they text differently than they appear, they act differently than they appear, and you're seeing the same thing kind of now. So if we in a traditional school setting start using distance learning a little bit, like a hybrid kind of thing, like put this in, put that in, you start using email with students, you may see a different student that you don't see when you're one of 30 kids in a class. That will give you some insight. That'll give you some opportunity to build a relationship, like, oh, hey, I can't believe you never say a word in here, but you do all your assignments, you're 8 for 8 here, blah, blah. You start hearing about that kid. Then maybe you start texting with that kid, hey, like I said, you do all your work here, and then you find something. And then with that relationship, obviously, is what we want. And I always tell people, I'm a school psychologist. I work with kids that you'll need to that school psychologists work with. But being a coach, if you think I'm having different conversations because one's counseling and one's a kid I coached, it's not happening. And if you think other coaches, and I know other coaches, aren't having the same conversations with their players that I'm having as the school psychologist working with any of the students, or if you think the person who has that great relationship with that music teacher or that art teacher or is in any of the our class advisories, is in our poetry club, they're all having these conversations. And when we think about counseling, you kind of brought up at the end, counseling is just conversations, and you're able to provide. Are we always going to get all these facilitating kind of discussions out of all conversations you have? Maybe not. But counseling is counseling. But there are some great teachers that are way better than talking to kids than I am. And just because I'm a psychologist or there's a guidance counselor, it's about the building relationship. There are coaches that are so close with their kids. There are art teachers that are so close with their kids, and that's really where, in the middle of they talk about economic counselor. Do we need to make sure every kid has counseling? No, but we need to make sure every kid feels comfortable talking to somebody. And believe me, there are great people out there that they can talk to. And there are teachers that are making way bigger imprints than maybe I would be as a counselor, or maybe the next guidance counselor would be. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's a way that I hope we can kind of fulfill what you're talking about in maybe a more fiscally maybe a more fiscally eligible way, You
hit a perfect point. The idea of a specific counselor is really not the answer, but the ability to speak with someone that you trust, establish that relationship of trust, to talk to somebody is so valuable. And what is frustrating is that we're so overloaded with curriculum, we're so overloaded with standards, we're so overloaded with preparation for academic testing that it's very, very difficult to fit that time in, number one, and number two, and probably more importantly, to allow that thought to come into our thinking. That we need to slow down, and we need to have the opportunity to get to know that child in a new way. I want to. Mike Farris talked about it, the Grammy winner who was very involved with us. Chris Herron talked about it. Katie Tupin talked about it. Tammy Joy Lane talked about it. Doc Golden talked about it in their interviews with us. They would have loved to have had somebody just ask them, "How you doing? Is everything okay?" Because they managed to mask and they managed to somehow fit in that shadow or in that mold of, well, that person's okay, they got it together, when in fact it was all a facade. And then from there, they had their real difficult times. So it is, like you say, it is that teacher. How can maybe we can build some things into the schedule that allow for this. So I throw this out as just hypotheticals.
So I think it's a fortunate time, because I think what you were talking about with demands sometimes limit the availability of developing the relationship. I think we're all hearing social emotional learning, a lot more these days. So I think there's definitely been a preference on that from a state wide. You and I are in a pretty fortunate district, I feel, for that, because I think our administrators are all are all feeling that as well, and want to make sure that happens as well. We have some people that, I hear it a lot. I'm in the circles where, they would be talking about social emotional, just being, one of the psychologists at the high school and those kinds of things. I do know this. I work with, what could be students that are in the special ed, resource rooms in those smaller settings. There are a number of special education students that I may see from counseling that may rather talk to their resource room teacher. And I say may, they definitely would, because they have the everyday relationship with them. Like the "hey, how are you?" like you talked about is great relationship starter. But when you think about the people that have impacted, my life, or people that have impacted your life, it were people that you were around for a long period of time. Maybe you saw them in a different light over a long period of time. So a lot of our students, maybe more males than females, they don't want to walk into a room for counseling, but they do want to talk to someone they care about, and they do want to talk to somebody that they know cares about them. So those are actions over a long period of time. Those are actions over to get to that point. And coach, I can tell you. You impacted a lot of lives as being a baseball coach or being coach, and I know that from when you used to come back and talk. There were a lot of so that was over all those days of practices. The kids that I spend the most time with are during the summer, when I'm driving kids up to Albany for our Albany League, or when I'm doing all kind of stuff. The amount of relationship building that goes on for that, they could be 7th or 8th graders. I have that bond with them when they're they're some of them are 20 or 18, 19 now. You can never take back those moments. So it's just driving up the thruway, just talking about, what their favorite pizza place was 7 years ago or whatever, and they trust you, and you get that from that.
Yeah.
It takes that much time, I think, to really feel that. Is that available in the school day? Over a long period of time it is, but it's not as easy as with all the demands. But hopefully we're getting on a path where people start understanding that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you are right. As coaches, we're given a beautiful gift to get to know these students outside of the classroom, and the relationships that are able to be developed if you put the time in and the energy in, and you're authentic, are, like you say, they are lifelong. I'm going to shift because we're lots to talk about. Parents, if parents notice that their child is kind of shutting the door and isolating themselves from the family, or from the discussions and family moments and things like that, and parents suspect that the kids might be going through some emotional, social issues, what advice would you have for parents to help them through that, to guide them through this?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, so I talk to a lot of parents. Sometimes I'll ask these kinds of questions, and now we're, in a very, different setting. We spend a lot of our time as adults talking about what being in your room on your device can do to you. And now we're, now with nothing else, when we're being told to stay home and we're not providing opportunities to get out and all these other scenarios. And now being social is being on the device, in a positive way. So, there's so many, it's such a balance of understanding where the student, where the kid is at, where your son or daughter is at. I think you need to see some, again, it comes back to me, and you have a lot less control as the kids get older. It always comes back to what is the routine of the day. So if they're not fulfilling the routine, those are kind of things like, oh, what's going on with this? And then you can have conversations with that, and again, we're in a time now where priorities have to be communicated as a family. Is school important? School should be important, right? But is it important right now? Can the family, if they have 4, 5, 6 students and a lot of them are younger, can getting all 5 of the kids the assignments due when they're younger, is that important right now? Every day to make sure all of them are done versus everything else that's going on. We have people that are working very, very stressful jobs. We have people that are working that are not working or in stress. So what becomes important? So those are always conversations. Really, what are the priorities for us going to be? And when we're not hitting that, then we need to start having conversations of where it is. So as for signs and triggers, you have to see what the important priorities are for you and your son or daughter, what the routine's supposed to kind of look like, what this looks like now. And if they're not really out there, if they're not hitting those, those certain bullet points that you want, that's when discussions can kind of start.
Yeah.
Signs are, I know students will wake up whenever they feel like it, and, at this point as they get a little older and stuff like that. But if they're waking up and they're not getting much out of bed, even if it is 2:00 and they're not really doing much, that's not going to be a productive. Long period of time anyway. That seems to be the routine every day. So you're going to want to adjust, and talk about that, So those are kind of the signs. Have some points that you think points of emphasis that you feel like are important and relative to your family. And if they're not able to meet those opportunities, those kind of benchmarks, that'll give you some, opportunities for discussion.
Having those discussions, having that awareness, opening the conversation, all very, very important. How do you gauge the emotional health of a child? How can we really tune in for those that aren't around children all the time, such as teachers and people that work in this kind of a field do? How can we gauge that emotional health? Again,
like I said before, my guess is a guess. There are people that are, school psychologists that have better ideas probably than I do, and there's definitely people in the other psychology world that do. What I would like to use kind of is, that's why the school setting or the setting where there's kind of tasks that need to be done, if they're not being done, then that kind of gives you like, okay, is open for discussion. What else is going on? When we don't really have that because those aren't the priorities, then you have to kind of see, about all the physiological stuff that you would measure. Are they eating the right amount of times? Are they, are they getting the right amount of sleep? Sleep has been something that I've wanted to discuss and bring to the forefront for a long period of time with adolescents. And a lot of it is based around the things they're doing that they can't sleep. But you would be amazed about the conversations or the texts that you can get on a school night from somebody who it's 1:57 in the morning, 2:57 in the morning, and the kids are getting to school, which means they're sleeping 4 or 5 hours, those kinds of things. So, if you don't have tasks that they're not hitting to, then maybe you start looking at the physiological stuff. Are they talking to you? Are they coming down for dinner? Are they, do they feel like, are they hygiene can be an issue at this point because they're not leaving, so they're not going to if they're not leaving, they're not showering a lot, those kinds of things. Those are all benchmarks that you can kind of assess with. Okay, are they doing this? And then also have conversations with. So why aren't you showering, man? So those kinds of things.
So we've identified it as a parent. Something's wrong. I don't know what to do. What's the next step for them? Who can they reach out to? Can they reach out to the school system? Can they reach out to, is there any particular organization or agency that they can reach out to for help?
Yeah, so like locally, there's now, obviously I try to pay attention. The only information I'm allowing in about, COVID is going to be through the people that are in control of, number one, the facts, and number in control of what we're going to be allowed to do. So I pay attention to what Governor Cuomo says. In the last the last couple of days, there's been a lot of social media. He's making sure it's getting out there. Mental health, mental health is here. We're here for your mental health. I think we're now starting to really see, as this extends, we're starting to see that consequence be now to the forefront. So there's a lot of mental health areas. So there's a lot of community. We have a lot of communities around here that we help, that help out from a community aspect of it. You can reach out to the school, absolutely. And, not every, this is going through the country now. There are some schools that are wrapping up soon. This is May down south and those kind of things. So I don't know if the school's available, but the schools, what the relative relationship is with the school right now during summertime or distance learning, but yes, and those schools will have resources. But there are, if you look right now at your local governors or your local or anywhere, you're going to see a lot of resources for mental health, not only awareness, but also services. And we have those resources for our particular school that we can give out. Now I think there's a lot more teletherapy going on. I do know there are the students that do see a therapist are seeing them through teletherapy. But again, there's a emergency crisis factor, and then there's also, I need some more, I want some help with my child right now. What can you do? And hopefully as we get a little bit more comfortable in this setting, we'll have a more efficient path for what that looks like. And again, it's starting, it's getting nice out too. We gotta get people out of the house. And I can go on a whole, it'll almost be a rant if I start talking about how this could be troublesome for us, keeping us in in our homes for this long.
Yeah, the physical aspect to the mental and emotional and social health is a key component. Coach, I want to thank you for coming and joining us here. This was really great. I hope that we can have you back because we're just scratching the surface on something that I think and hope that through these days of just uncertain times, we're able to learn and grow and advance as a result.
Coach, I just want to thank you. Coach, I just want to thank you. Obviously, the message of Hope Rocks obviously is very big for our community, but it looks like it's going to be, it's way bigger than even our community. It's a great purpose. I don't think until people actually realize the amount of work and decisions and just the amount of work that goes into all this. So I want to thank you, and I love the fact that we're getting this into different areas, and we're hitting different people. We're hitting people, in all in all interest levels, and that's all. That's what's about, right? Is hitting one of those areas, and then being able to bring in all those people and develop those relationships and everything like that. So just thank you.
Thank you, Coach. And you hit on, we lost our Hope Rocks hardball tournament, and next year it'll be twice as good. And I'm so glad that you're involved. And if you could just hang on a second, I'll talk to you before I cut out. And I just want to talk to everybody at home for now. I want to remind you that there is plenty of help for you. There's plenty of support for you. And if you know somebody that's struggling or you're struggling yourself, check out hoperocksny.com, our website. Check out our Facebook page. You are not alone. You are not alone. There is a lot of support for you out there. There's tremendous people out there ready to help, ready to show you the way, and it's there. Don't feel alone. We're here. We have a great event scheduled for July 18th. We're really looking forward to it. It's called Hope Rocks Ride for Recovery, and that takes place July 18th. It is a motorcycle run and also a bicycle rally. The registration is online, but it's for the whole family. When the motorcycle run, I believe, is a 50-mile run around Ulster County and Greene County. The bicycle run, there's a 5-mile bike ride and there's a 25-mile bike ride. They come back to the main registration area, and we'll have live bands all day with barbecue. You don't want to miss that. What a great way to kick off the summer and really get ourselves ready for the getting back to normal. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, just as a reminder, Mike Farris has his he has his Mornings with Mike recovery meetings. These are outstanding meetings. Whether you are in recovery, whether you need a boost mentally, whether you just want to check in, check out Mike's Facebook page every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Central. I'm sure you'll be glad you did. I'm going to go back to Coach. Coach, looking forward to seeing you in person, and I want you and your family to stay safe, be well. Next year is going to be even better because we always learn from today. My best.
Thank you, Coach. Tell Kieran I said hello.
I will. Take care.
Bye.